Okay, thank you very much and welcome to this freezing room. I hope that back there is warmer than it is here. If anybody feels like coming a little bit closer, that's also okay. Thank you for coming. My name is Giovanni Broussard. I work for the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. I used to be based in Bangkok, in Thailand, Southeast Asia, for the past 14 years, and just a few months ago, I actually moved to Kenya, and now I cover another region of the world. But when we asked for this side event, I was still the program manager of the project that we will be talking about as well today, Project SAFE. The side event that we have today will last more or less 1 hour, we feel. For reporting purposes, I would kindly ask you to register. There are QR codes on the walls. If you have not registered already outside of the room, you can do it through the QR code. And I think that there are some other forms that are circulating around the table. So please, for our reporting purposes, make sure that you register. We will have 5 speakers today, and then we will open for questions, comments, suggestions from the floor. At the end of the side event, we will ask you to help us, again, for reporting purposes, by compiling an evaluation form for which you will find the QR code at the end of this presentation. So without any further ado, I would like to move on and explain that we have now 5 speakers here today, which I would like to introduce. The first speaker of the day is Ms. Agata Sobiech, the team leader and international wildlife, including CITES at the EU DG on Environment. Very welcome to this side event, and thank you for being with us, Agata. The second speaker on continuing in this order is Ms. Clairung Pumpon, Director of CITES Implementation and Monitoring at the Department of Natural Park, Wildlife and Plant Conservation in Thailand from the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment in Thailand. Thank you very much, Kun Clairung, for being with us. Then, following the order, we'll have Ms. Doreen Lynn Robinson, the Head of Biodiversity and Land Division at UNEP headquarters based in Nairobi. Thank you very much, Doreen, for being with us. And last but absolutely not least, we have Mr. Susat Sayakomuan, the DG of the Department of Forestry from Lao PDR. We will have also a video intervention from Vietnam, since the delegate could not make it to Panama. Unfortunately, we will have Ms. Vu Phuong from the One Health Partnership in Vietnam, from the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development. So the reason why we are here today is really to introduce a little bit the Project SAFE, but to talk more generally about prevention approaches to the link between wildlife trade and zoonotic diseases, especially with a focus on Southeast Asia. Why Southeast Asia? Largely because it has been documented that the use of wildlife for various reasons in Southeast Asia is particularly high. And in a sense, COVID was a reminder of the intricate relationship between wildlife and human beings. Okay, now it's really dark. Maybe Jonathan, if you can bring it up a little. Okay, thank you. A little bit less. So Southeast Asia is actually linked to many different forms of wildlife consumption, whether it is for tourism, whether it is for consumption as in the sense of eating, whether it is for farming, for captive breeding, or we've seen also more recently various forms of entertainment like wildlife cafes that are popping up in various parts of wildlife Asia, of Southeast Asia. Now, all these facilities very often involve also an engagement, a direct contact between humans and wildlife. And with this project, we really try to understand whether the illegalities that may be associated to wildlife facilities, the criminal activities that may be associated, or the just lack of compliance to the existing regulations may become a driver of potential new emerging pathogens and zoonotic diseases, and therefore a potential driver towards new pandemics. So that was the rationale of this project. I'll show you now a 1-minute video that hopefully will clarify a little bit better what the project intends to do.
Earth is a complex web of life. But when wildlife is taken illegally from nature and smuggled to cities and villages, the risk of spreading animal-borne diseases, the so-called zoonotic diseases, becomes higher. Wildlife that has been illegally caught or smuggled is more likely to become ill because of poor treatment during transportation. Without any hygiene and sanitary controls, smuggled wildlife can transfer diseases to other animals and humans. The SAFE project aims to prevent future pandemics by focusing on the connection between wildlife crimes and the transmissions of zoonotic diseases. Currently implemented in Thailand, Vietnam, Laos PDR, and the state of Sabah in Malaysia. SAFE, together with local authorities, will identify facilities with a high risk of zoonotic disease transmission, find safety improvements for locations that handle wildlife, and promote good practices at the international level. With SAFE, we create a healthier environment for wildlife and humans.
Thank you very much. And this project is generously funded by the European Union. And for this reason, I would like to invite now Ms. Agata Sobiech to give some opening remarks for this side event. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the invitation. So yes, the EU recognizes that the use of and trade in wildlife is one means that pathogens can spread. An illegal trade, which by definition is uncontrolled and undocumented, is of particular concern, and therefore the actions to address this trade are very important and play a key role in halting the spread of zoonotic disease, and also all the actions related to that. This is why actions to address this link between trade or illegal trade and spread of zoonotic diseases features quite prominently in a recently adopted EU revised action plan against wildlife trafficking. It's really very fresh because it was adopted on the 9th of November. It's a set of actions, objectives and actions that are going to guide the EU action against wildlife, illegal wildlife trade for the next few years. It has a number of priorities, ranging from cooperating and sort of strengthening the measures at the, let's say, supply side. It has one of the priorities is about strengthening policy and legal framework. Another one is about improving enforcement. And finally, fostering global cooperation. The actions to address zoonotic disease, or the link between zoonotic spread of zoonotic diseases and illegal wildlife trade feature in priority number 1, but to be true, it is actually very horizontal and has to be addressed throughout the different priorities. So in terms of the concrete actions that we included in the action plan, One is further examining the risk of the spread of zoonotic diseases related to that trade, but also then implementing targeted measures to reduce this risk throughout the supply chains. And this is very much what I think SAFE project is doing. And this is we're very happy to support UNODC in its implementation. I really hope that the lessons learned through this project will also be able to help in other regions or in other activities. We also have another project that we support in Africa that is implemented by the FAO. And it focuses on application of the One Health approach to hunting practices in 11 African countries. So there again, we do hope that the lessons learned from different programs that we fund, but also that other programs which we're not necessarily involved in, we can really spread and share, including at events like this one, which I think is very, very important. Again, per definition, this requires global cooperation, and it will be really crucial to ensure a coordinated and effective response to these threats. And also just maybe putting very briefly in the context in which we are. I mean, for us as the EU, it is really important that the different organizations and different structures, conventions address the issue within the mandate, their mandates, but in a very close cooperation with each other. So I'll finish here. Oh, I would like to just warn that unfortunately I'll have to leave at 1:10, and it's very difficult to do it in an unnoticed way from here, so I prefer to warn you already. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Agatha. And with this nice introduction and explanation of why the European Union is funding a project like SAFE, I would like just to briefly explain that SAFE has got three objectives. One is really to develop a risk assessment framework. View from a health point of view, from a conservation point of view, that are related to wildlife facilities, based on the field analysis of facilities and collection of data related to these risks. We will try to work with the government to develop better regulatory regulations and policies in terms of management of wildlife facilities, and eventually we will try to escalate this issue at regional level to find common principles within Asia and in cooperation with the European Union to try to then implement those general international principles that should be adopted to reduce the risks of zoonotic diseases from wildlife facilities. Now, what Project SAFE is not, and this is something that we need to clarify many times. It's not a project that tries to determine what's the origin of COVID-19. Very often we are asked whether we are trying to ascertain what is the origin of COVID-19. That's not the project objective. That's really not what we're doing. We're not even collecting animal samples from facilities for lab analysis. We are really collecting only data and information on risk management. SAFE project is also not sharing information about the results of these surveys outside of the government counterparts. The main beneficiary of the research that we are conducting will be the government, with a view to develop informed new regulations and policies based on facts that we will collect during the field activities. And Project SAFE doesn't even have a preconceived agenda on issues like trade or farms or zoos or bans. It's really purely collecting information so that the government can have a correct and informed way of making decisions. So it's really much more about collecting data than really having a recommended approach to how to solve the problems. This will be a result of engagement with the government and trying to understand country by country what are the best solutions. We are not of the idea that in this project every country will necessarily come to the same conclusions or to the same solutions. Now, in this regard, I would like my colleague Ross McEwen to explain a little bit better what are some of the technical aspects related to Project SAFE. Ross is in Bangkok, so he has recorded this message for this event.
Thanks, Giovanni. Good afternoon. My name is Ross McEwen. I'm the UNODC Environment Team Project Officer for the SAFE project based in Bangkok, Thailand, and coordinating activities in Southeast Asia. Apologies I'm not in Panama to present in person, but we're currently amid our field site visits across our focal countries in Thailand, Lao PDR, Sabah State, Malaysia, and Vietnam. SARS-CoV-2 was a novel emergent zoonotic coronavirus, likely originating in bats, but like its predecessor, the coronavirus SARS very likely had an intermediate wild animal host, which became a vector leading to the current human pandemic. Wildlife trade, whether legal or illegal, was the likely origin of COVID-19 pandemic, and hence why this is of direct relevance to CITES, with further discussions in document 23.1 and 23.2. In Southeast Asia, there are many different types of human-wildlife interactions, some of which carrying potentially more risk of disease spillover than others. Riskier categories from a potential pandemic perspective are more likely to be mammal-based operations, where there is the potential for aerosol or direct transmission of respiratory disease, and where that transmission could become widespread in short periods of time. Now, of course, there is also a compounding factor when dealing with the commercial wildlife sector, and that is the often widespread flouting of laws and the illegal wildlife trade. Firstly, it's useful to soften the language here. While it's true there are very large numbers of commercial wildlife operations that are operating illegally, we need to determine whether this is due to a lack of knowledge or awareness about the regulations and registration requirements, so more of a lack of compliance, or whether this is due to intentional activities to avoid, corrupt, or disregard regulations with an aim to maximize profit. Those truly illegal wildlife operations must be given no leeway and need to be identified and closed using existing or new regulatory powers. The lack of transparency of those operations, wildlife sourcing, conditions of transport, and trade chain lengths offer unacceptable risks and potential pathogen amplification environments. Therefore, with so many different wildlife operation types in Southeast Asia, and an appreciation that there are illegal wildlife crime operations within some of those facilities, we needed a criterion for the SAFE project for developing a shortlist of wildlife operations, given our limited resources for on-site assessments across multiple countries. To refine a shortlist, we asked an expert panel, our scientific advisory committee, to assess what we know about the operational conditions, that is, the suite of conditions associated with the operations that could give rise to a spillover risk. We cross-referenced that with a list against the potential for illegal activities, information provided by the NGO community. Now, some of our facility types are country-specific, while others are more generic across the region. The first facility types we're interested in are primate facilities, and those are associated with the biomedical trade. You only have to look at the CITES trade databases to see the number of macaques that are moved across country each year, a huge number. We know there's illegality involved in that process, as well as legal trade as well. Zoos is another interesting category for us because it's such a broad definition. Private zoos, government zoos, all operating slightly differently, all encouraging, or at least most encouraging, some physical contact with animals. Wildlife cafes is a new business venture we see across Southeast Asia. This is people having their coffee, having their lunch alongside animals, so effectively petting the animals, close physical contact with wildlife and wild animals. The captive breeding facility, again, a broad category, anything from tigers to civets and everything in between. We know that the facility types are not always ideal for these types of ventures, so this is an interesting area for us to have a look at. And the exotic or wildlife pet markets, we know there's a huge demand for exotic pets within Southeast Asia, mostly in urban environments. And then these now famous pictures from Eddie Holmes from Australia. We're also looking at wet markets, specifically wet markets selling wildlife and selling mammals. So again, it's another interesting category for us to look at. And finally, restaurants, again, restaurants selling wildlife and selling mammals. Now, a key initial component of the SAFE project are our on-site visits, with interviews and physical assessments of the wildlife facilities, all in relation to spillover risk. Those visits are by advance request invitation, and the UNODC team are accompanied on the site visit by some of our government counterparts. Not specifically because of their enforcement powers, although this certainly helps with access, but so as they can also see firsthand the potential risk issues and hear the experiences and often the frustrations from owners with regards permitting and licensing confusion. Our government counterparts tend to be wildlife agencies or livestock departments, disease control centres, and even market control agencies. Of course, not all the wildlife facilities we ask to visit are welcoming of our attention, and some refuse outright. However, to date, most commercial wildlife facilities, whether zoos, wildlife breeding centres, or exotic pet markets, are relatively compliant and supportive of the SAFE project objectives, which are, after all, fundamentally aiming to protect them, their family, and the wider community. The raw results from our questionnaire and direct observations from our facility assessments and resulting analysis are not going to be widely shared, but kept confidential between UNODC and our government counterparts, albeit shared with relevant national stakeholders and our own scientific advisory committee. The intent of our work is not to embarrass or to finger point obvious lapses, but to identify them and work with national and international experts to mitigate or eradicate those risks. Of course, government stakeholders are free themselves to include those data in wider consultation exercises, stakeholder groups, and of course, UNODC recommends that the data from the SAFE project be directly submitted to national One Health action plans. In terms of trends from our limited data to date, it's too early to say. However, as expected, we are seeing a general confusion and a lack of awareness about licensing requirements for those operating commercially with wildlife. Also, commercial wildlife operations tend to be focused in more rural settings, and this spatial overlap with humans, captive animals, livestock, and wild animals, particularly macaques, but also squirrels and rats, is of concern if not properly mitigated. Similarly, there's a high incidence of encouraged physical contact and feeding between humans and animals in many wildlife facilities. And this is a profit-generating exercise, so money is paid to encourage people to feed the animals. There's an obvious absence of hand washing close by. We've also seen very little consideration of protection against the vectors of avian influenza in any of the facilities we've visited, despite many having wildfowl on site. And we've seen a lot of nervousness and surprising sensitivity about answering questions in relation to animal sourcing. But also positives, we see countries, especially Thailand, really embracing important technology, with almost all shops and even street vendors offering cashless payment options. This minimizes direct contact and maintains distance, and while not bulletproof, is a significant barrier to disease transmission. Sadly, the illegal wildlife trade also appears during our research, and you don't have to spend too much time on Facebook to see the daily sale of high-risk taxa, such as macaques, sourced directly from the wild and offered for sale as pets to urban environments. We have a long way to go with our data collection, but hope to complete this phase by early 2023, at which point we'll share a wider scope of trends we observe. Our intention is not a large, comprehensive, quantitative assessment of the wildlife-human interface. This will no doubt come in time as part of a greater One Health approach. Our approach is to act quickly, cooperate with the government counterparts, target obvious risks, reduce those risks, share our approaches, and as a consequence, reduce the potential for the next zoonotic pandemic. Thank you for your attention, and I wish you all a successful conference.
Thank you very much. And Ross is connected also online with us. So if later you will have questions, Ross from Bangkok, provided that he won't fall asleep by then, will be able to answer some of the questions. With this, we would like now to move quickly to some of the countries in which Project SAFE is implemented. And the first country that we have the honor to invite here to the podium is Thailand, through the heads of CITES and Implementation and Monitoring Department. Ms. Claire Rung, please, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, my colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. It's an honor to join this event. I would like to thank UNODC for organizing this event today and letting Thailand to join and to share our experience in tackling the potential zoonotic threats in Thailand's wildlife sector. And also thank you for introduction. I have some short time. So first, I would like to give you the overview situation in Thailand about the wildlife that related to the zoonotic disease that leads from the wildlife trade. So the trends in Thailand now that we can observe, the commercial wildlife trade for consumption and pets, I think is the most part of the commercial wildlife trade. We have some few the commercial trade for accessory, decoration or medicine, but more with the pets and for consumption. And also the increase of physical contact business, such as the animal cafe and animal rental for any business promotion. And another situation that I believe it is happened in many countries is the shift of physical to the virtual marketplace that sell the wildlife. So and what the challenge we have is that first we have three issues that is considered the challenges. The first is the law and regulation. Even though we have the Wildlife Protection and Reservation Act together with the law that relate to the livestock management, but there's still some animal that that fall between the Wildlife Act and the legislation on the livestock management, and that need the clearer regulations for the commercial facilities such as the high contact human and wildlife cafe and the wildlife farm consumption. So this is the problem is like the it cannot say that it's the loophole of the law because it is not included in any law. So because of the situation that we face this problem, and consequently because of the law, so we have no license for some wildlife facilities. So there are some unregulated wildlife trade, pet trade, and alien species. At present, we have only 42 facility of wildlife facility that officially registered and subject to inspection by the officer of the Department of National Park, Wildlife and Plant Conservation. But many others that operate inappropriately and or not in accordance with the current law that we have. And another issue is the knowledge and awareness of the business operator that related to wildlife. So there is some misunderstanding among business operators about the wild animal management and well-being. So what Thailand has trying to do is that we are working with the wildlife community to find the common ground together. So in Thailand, we have the group of the people that they have the exotic pet, and they have the association. There is Thailand Exotic Pet Association. So the pet trade is it's quite big in Thailand. So many people has the exotic pet, exotic animal as pet, and so we go to this group, try to understand each other about the current situation and the related regulation that can apply to them. And recently we have issued a new regulation that include 68 species that are controlled by the law, and it regulate the wild animal. Some of these, 68 animal that need to be registered for possession. This is the new regulation that we have. Furthermore, we try to understand the situation. We went to the wildlife market. As you, some of you may know about the Charuchak market that is selling the wildlife for pet. So we went there and look at the current situation to understand and try to see that what legislation and regulation that can apply to them for improvement. And also we have done some research and working with the multi-sector to identify, prevent and conduct the surveillance of potential emerging zoonotic disease. When the SAFE project is respond to our need to work more on the relation of the zoonotic disease and the wildlife trade. That is, we need to understand more. So the Department of National Park, Wildlife and Plant Conservation, together with the Department of Disease Control, Department of Livestock, Zoological Park Organization, and UNODC are working together to find the high-risk wildlife facility and location, and see the document they have to see that how the facilities operate, and to identify the risk in relation to zoonotic diseases. And all of this activity need to be done for developing of the biosafety standard to mitigate the risk of zoonotic disease in the wildlife facility. That is the purpose of the SAFE project that has already explained earlier. So at the moment, Thailand has established the National Advisory Committee. We have done the workshop that expert gathers to discuss and develop plan to discuss field survey and assess the list of zoonotic disease linked to the wildlife crime, and discuss about the first survey of the SAFE project to assess the wildlife facility. So next step, as I told you earlier, that some of the wildlife facility and some wildlife species are falling between the related law that we have. So all the effort we have done, and including the formulating the policy guideline, will include the issuing of new regulations about the possession, breed, and trade of the control, protected, and dangerous wild animals that we have just had it, and ongoing field survey to wildlife facility under the SAFE project, and to develop the list of the risk mitigation strategy at the local level, and consideration of policy changes that need. So that's all I think that Thailand can share with you. So if there is any question after this, I'm happy to respond to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Kun Klarung. And I think that now, without further ado, I would like to explain also that Project SAFE cannot be implemented really by UNODC and the government counterparts alone. It's a project whose mandate is much broader than the one of UNODC, that works mainly on the illegal aspects of the wildlife facilities, but we don't have a UNODC really the necessarily expertise to look at some of the issues that our partners actually develop. And our partners in particular are UNEP and FAO. And without the contribution of the expertise of these two partners, it would be impossible really to conduct properly Project SAFE. And that's why it's a particular honor for me to introduce now UNEP as a key co-implementer of Project SAFE, but in particular, Doreen will also introduce us a little bit more also to the whole issue of One Health. So Doreen, please, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here in this dark, cold room. But in addition to being the global head of biodiversity for UNEP, I'm also our main focal point for One Health. So you'll hear a little bit more about that. But first, I'll start with a little bit of what we're doing in this particular project. So our real objectives in the SAFE project is to provide that additional environmental expertise, in particular on regulatory and legal advice, to strengthen frameworks for countries. And I think there, what we bring to bear is evidence and science-based approach. In addition, we look at biosafety aspects, which is also relevant to the Convention on Biological Diversity and the Cartagena Protocol, and this whole idea of bringing together different policy dimensions that can be brought to bear to find solutions to challenging and wicked transdisciplinary problems. This gives you a quick outline of some of the things we'll be doing under the SAFE project, and it's everything from really supporting strengthening of national level guidelines and engaging with the pilot studies, but also really trying to leverage the One Health approach, which you'll hear more about. This is some more of our activities, and I'll let you read them. I won't read through them, but I think the important thing is, again, just focusing on the transdisciplinary approach that is unique in this project. And what I do want to point out, not always easy to do, because different sectors speak in different languages. And sometimes the starting point is to have to come together and find that common language and frame the problem a little bit differently together. So this is where I'll tell you a little bit about the One Health approach. And it is not a UNEP One Health approach, it's a worldwide One Health approach. Here I offer the latest definition of One Health because, again, as I said, sometimes we talk in different languages and we don't always know what we're talking about. So this I will take time to read because I think it's really important. One Health is an integrated, unifying approach that aims to sustainably balance and optimize the health of people, animals, and ecosystems. It recognizes the health of humans, domestic and wild animals, plants, often forgotten, and the wider environment as closely linked and interdependent. There's no such thing as human health without ecosystem health or animal health. And the approach really mobilizes multiple sectors and communities to work together to find common solutions. But underlying this One Health definition are also a couple of principles I want to highlight that we aim to apply as relevant in the SAFE project. And the first is a principle of equity, and that's equity of sectors and disciplines in a One Health approach. The second principle is about social and cultural parity and inclusivity. The idea is not to have a certain approach to health that dominates from either one particular worldview, but it's to define that together. The third principle is equilibrium and balance, and ensuring that when trade-offs and decisions are made in a One Health approach, they are done in a smart way. The fourth principle I think I'm on is the stewardship, and that's really the responsibility for human behavior change. And then the last one is, of course, transdisciplinarity. I'll skip this, but this is just some mention of some of the global enabling framework for One Health from the environment sector. There's many pieces of work going on, but I do want to highlight FAO is our partner, along with the World Organization for Animal Health and the World WHO, World Health Organization, in the Quadripartite Alliance for One Health. And here we've developed a joint plan of action. We believe these 6 action tracks, which are really framing these national One Health plans that Giovanni referenced, are priorities and are highly relevant to this particular program. The first one is focused on strengthening health systems, all health systems, and there's a workforce development component to that. The second is on focusing obviously on emerging and re-emerging zoonotic diseases. The third is on neglected tropical diseases. The fourth is on food safety hazards, which is particularly relevant to the issue of restaurants that was on the list of facilities. The fifth is on antimicrobial resistance. And then the sixth is environment is not meant to be a separate part of One Health approach, but because the environment dimensions of One Health have lagged behind human and animal health, we felt that a more strengthened aspect of that needed to be brought to bear. There is a joint plan of action that you can find online, and it looks just like this. The other point that I just want to emphasize on this is that The One Health approach is really about identifying threats together across sectors and then bringing to bear that transdisciplinarity to solve them. It is not, it is about context driven, and it's about looking at root causes that undermine those threats. It's not easy to do, and one of the challenges we have in all these countries in the SAFE project is there's a separate process going on to develop One Health national strategies. And one of the challenges we have is to bring that process together with the wildlife trade and the regulation process to make a more robust set of interventions in the countries. So we look forward to continuing to do that. And I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Doreen. That was very useful and very important. I mean, clarifying better the issue of One Health. I suppose that essentially where Project SAFE is sitting is trying probably to add the dimension of security to the traditional approach of One Health and trying to understand whether illegal activities actually can undermine the success of One Health plans. And by looking at facilities that are more exposed to risks of crime, non-compliance or illegalities, we're trying to understand also whether that will prevent the achievement of One Health plans. And one of the countries where we're working, Vietnam, actually has developed already a One Health partnership, and later on we will hear also from the secretariat of that partnership about what's going on. But before moving to Vietnam, I would like now to move to Lao PDR. That is one of the countries involved in Project SAFE, and we are pleased to have here with us the Director General of the Department of Forestry under the Ministry of Forestry, Mr. Susat. Thank you again for being with us. But I'll ask Mr. Keo Puvong to actually come and cover from this podium some of the activities that are going to look specifically at the threats of zoonotic diseases spillover in Lao PDR, within and outside of Project SAFE. So, Mr. Keo Puvong, can I ask you to come here?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to introduce myself. My name is Mr. Keo Puvong from Department of Forestry, Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry, Lao PDR. Today, I'm very sensitive to UNODC that give opportunity to me to share some experience. As you know, SAFE project is quite new in our country, so but we are very appreciated to collaborate and work together in future. Today, let me introduce the topic reduction and treat of zoo disease spillover and transmission in Lao PDR. Like, as you know, like in another country, Lao PDR was sufficient effective by the COVID-19 pandemics. Its delivery that COVID-19 disease is operating from wildlife before spillover of to human. Individual country cannot blame for natural zoonotic disease emergence. Need to global respond to prevent pandemics. Individual country soon work to reduce opportunity to zoonotic disease spillover and transmission. Like another country is Southeast Asia, Lao PDR promotes sustainable use of its resource introducing wildlife. Wildlife is often summer, usually available as some local community, but not in cited species, but local species, but in appendix 3 only. Wildlife farm provide income and employer opportunity for someone in improve rural community. Wildlife facility in Laos is include licensed captive breeding of mammals, birds, and reptiles. In the future, we need to awareness the generation to generation like the local community and local people to understand the disease from wildlife consumption. Need to set up strong registration system for wildlife facility, including review of regulation, management of wildlife, and inspection, investigation, interrogation, and monitoring system. As you know, at this time now we are on the process to revise the wildlife and aquatic law. And as you know, our DG has announced already the high level of our Prime Minister had signature for the CITES decree already. In the future, we need to ensure farming practice and for wildlife control similar to another livestock animal. Need to ensure that the traditional markets better understanding food safety issue and incorporate practice to reduce the speed of disease. Need to ensure the different government agency effectively communicate in related to pandemic prevention on One Health approach. Inform unlicensed wildlife farm to ensure their approach in compliance with existing regulation, Lao PDR regulation, and law and cited regulation. Revising wildlife aquatic law ensure better law enforcement actions against illegal wildlife trade. Working with wildlife sector, suggesting zoonotic disease list and develop mitigant action to reduce those lists. Working with UNODC and another developed partner, building capacity building, tackle illegal wildlife trade, and reduce to potential for zoonotic disease spiral and transmission. Thank you. ขอบใจหลายๆ
Thank you very much, Mr. Kelpevong, and it's interesting to hear that Lao PDR is actually in the process of passing a new legislation on wildlife, which entails also new regulation on the management of wildlife and wildlife facilities. Now we have a short 3-minute video from another partner of Project SAFE from Vietnam. We have Ms. Vu Phong from the One Health Partnership Secretariat. It's a partnership that brings together different ministries, 3 in particular: Ministry of Health, Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development, and Ministry of Environment. I think Vietnam is one of the countries in Southeast Asia that embarked probably more strongly on the issue of One Health. And so we're gonna hear now from Ms. Hu about the experience that they have in Vietnam. I hope that the audio will be good enough. And then after that, we open the floor for questions and comments.
Good afternoon. My name is the International Coordinator for One Health Partnership of Vietnam. I would like to summaries of the One Health Partnership in Vietnam. The One Health Partnership framework was approved by the Deputy Minister and was signed among 3 ministries: Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment. With 29 development partners. And then 1 year later, we have the National Master Plan on One Health. I think that Vietnam is the leading country in the One Health activity, and the national master plan was approved very early, and quick. So the One Health partnerships structure include the steering committee, the One Health partnership secretariat, the technical multi-sectoral technical coordination board, including different technical departments under 3 ministries. And the overall objectives of the One Health partnership is to minimize the risk of the genetic pathogen and environmental agent spillover and antimicrobial resistance by improving multi-sectoral One Health collaboration. We have a 6 objectives, the same with the joint action plan of FAO and WHO and WOA. Then for the One Health partnership, we have a different technical working group. We have a pandemic working group. We have a food safety working group, antimicrobial resistant group, research and policy groups. These technical working groups are held every 6 months or even more if requested. Currently, we have a different projects and activities. About more than 50 projects and activities implemented by MART, MONRE, and MOH, and development partner based in Vietnam. Most of them on genetic disease, AMR, rabies, food safety. In the future, we would like to include cited activities under the One Health activity so that we have a general picture of the One Health, including the environment, human, and animal health. Thank you.
Okay, so we heard also from a country, Vietnam, that actually started to put into practice the concept of One Health by bringing together different ministries, 29 development partners, conducting 50 activities without a joint action plan, something quite ambitious and overseen by 3 different ministries. So it's one example of where actually Ministry of Health, Ministry of Environment, and Ministry of Agriculture have come together to try to put into practice the theory of One Health. So these are the main presentation that we had in mind for this side event, and I would be interested to know whether from the floor there is anyone who now would like to ask questions to either the speakers or express some comments, additional comments on further contribution that you have in mind in terms of how the trade of wildlife can contribute to health concerns and how we can prevent the emergence of new zoonotic diseases by looking at wildlife facilities. So the floor is yours. We have a microphone that will go around the group. When you have a question, please just introduce yourself before asking the question.
Hello, my name is Melissa McKillen from Australia. I was interested, one of the themes in the presentations was around the need for better information and education of facility owners and so forth. I was just interested in understanding a little more, potentially from Thailand, about whether what you have done to try and improve education, and have you had a good response or seen facilities improve what they are doing from that basic step of just giving them more information about risk, compliance, and so forth?
In Thailand case, we have just as I mentioned in my presentation that we are working together with the private sector who have a wildlife in their facility, which is including the people who have the wildlife for pet. And to give information was coming from the question that they had given to the Department of National Park about what kind of wildlife that they can force and they can breed or something like this. So first is trying to understand each other and to give them more information about the law. And in particularly this time, we have enact the new law 2019 Wildlife Protection and Restoration Act that has the consequent subordinate law and which define the detail of both breed and manage the wildlife. So we are trying to communicate with them on the situation and the new regulation that will affect them. And for the question that is there any change that we can observe from our efforts in trying to giving building awareness among them. We have just began and some observation that we can see now is that the better relationship between the government and private, so that we can expect the better or the improvement in the management of wildlife in private facility. And especially, I would like to emphasize that there is a species of animal that people don't know that whether they can post, they can breed. So some information like this is still a problem in Thailand. So we hope that working with the private sector will solve this problem. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And the question asked by Melissa is really relevant. I think that also in Lao PDR, we've been asked to include actually an awareness raising campaign for owners of facilities in the private sector. And the objective is really that as the new legislation and regulation develops, there are resources also to reach out to the facilities that are very often remote in the country. And it's kind of difficult to reach all the owners with the information about the new legislation. So in Lao PDR, we have just included a new component of the project to take care specifically of that dissemination of information. So we don't have data yet to determine whether we see positive changes once a campaign is in place, once more information is in place, but possibly by the end of the project, we will have more information on that. But thank you, Melissa, for the question. Any other question from the floor? 1 and 2. Rob, first 3. Okay.
The legislation seems to allow animal facilities in Thailand and also in Laos. And I understand that disease surveillance is outside of the scope of the current project, the SAFE project. But in terms of trying to establish baselines for future monitoring of the impact of a One Health approach, are there any plans to carry out disease surveillance to understand what's out there in the wild populations, or the wild populations?
So surveillance on disease in wild population. Okay. Shall we also get the next question and then we'll cover that, Rob?
Thank you. My name is Vanessa. I'm from Brazil, and I'm here as part of the Lewis Clark delegation. My question is regarding the Project SAFE, and as it's being developed in the scope of this and in coordination with many UN agencies, including the Quadripartite Alliance for the One Health. I was wondering if the Project SAFE is already working or contributing somehow to the International Treaty on Pandemic Prevention. If so, how? If not, if there's any plans to do that. Thank you.
The National Treaty on?
The International, WHO International Treaty on Pandemic Prevention.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. There was another question, I think.
Thank you. This is great. I'm Elizabeth Dow from the Biodiversity Division at the U.S. Agency for International Development. And my question is about the data collection and sharing in the video from Ross, I believe. I certainly understand the sensitivities and not wanting to share specific information about the facilities, but I'm wondering if there could be aggregate data sharing for just benefits of the global community. And also, I do have another question, and it's regarding the analysis of specific risk assessment that is being used. If that is a specific assessment that SAFE has developed, or is it an adaptation from the many risk assessments? And I'm just curious if that's something that is publicly available or something specific to SAFE. Thank you.
Thank you very much. One more question there.
Hi, there. Sorry, from the Wildlife Conservation Society. So in April 2021, the World Health Organization, the World Organization on Animal Health, and UNEP issued guidance to suspend the trade in live mammals for food and breeding purposes as an emergency measure unless demonstrable effective regulations and adequate risk assessment are in place. Is this project aligned with that guidance that was issued last year? And could you speak a bit about that and how it will be following through on that quite sensible recommendation from WHO? Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. We've got one more question and then we move to the answers.
Thank you. I'm Stephen Paras from the Sustainable Use Coalition of Southern Africa. I get a sense from some of the presentations that you're sensitive to the fact that there's no doubt that there is a bias among some organizations or some trends towards utilizing zoonotic disease or some kind of a boogeyman to chase the agenda of banning of trade and the movement of animals and that type of thing. My suspicion is that that can undermine a lot of the good work done in this space because it creates a divide and polarizes people on those lines. We, for example, in South Africa, do a lot of wildlife breeding, and it's nice to see the Lao People's Republic being similar. And we've already felt the direct threat that potentially could come from what we believe might be an unfounded bias emanating from the boogeyman, where people use the pandemic as, in the theory of don't let a good crisis go to waste. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Then I think we'll move now to the answers. If you don't mind, I'll start from the last point. I just wanted to clarify that Project SAFE, as I said before, does not have any agenda, does not suggest to shut down any farm. I think that the issue of COVID just brought back to the attention a topic that was probably for many organizations a little bit forgotten, which is the impact on human health of the interaction with wildlife. By no means there is a suggestion by Project SAFE that wildlife farms are bad and should be shut down. On the contrary, there are wildlife farms that can have a very sound plan of reducing the emergence of possible pathogens. But what we are trying to do with Project SAFE is just to assess the risks and try to understand whether the government and the private sector are aware about the existing risks in terms of management of facilities, risks to public health and risks to conservation and risks to security. But it's not at all a project that is recommending or pushing a hidden agenda towards closing the facilities. Going back to the question by Rob, the first question on the possibility of conducting surveillance on diseases among wild animals, but also you meant also outside of the facilities. Inside, okay.
Yeah, within the wider context of that there.
Okay, I don't know if Kun Klarung, you can answer this question about the ongoing efforts of Thailand towards surveillance of diseases within facilities. Is there any effort going in that direction together with livestock department, veterinaries, etc.?
It is for the surveillance, this is from wildlife in facility. At the moment, we do not have that program under the work of the Department of Wildlife and Plant Conservation, but we do have the surveillance of disease from the wildlife. It is according to the situation we have faced earlier from the avian influenza that made us work together with the Department of Livestock and the Ministry of Public Health in collecting sample of the bird in the wild, including in the facility like the Chatuchak Market to monitor the disease. But for in other case, we cannot do like surveillance within the wildlife facility. However, we just have conduct one research just in last year to collect sample from the animal in the private wildlife facility. There was like many things to do with the research work to collect the sample from the wildlife facility belong to the private sector, because we have to get consent from them. So it's difficult for us, but we have begun to understand the situation. So we have done one research to collect the sample from the mammal and reptiles to have a test in the laboratory for what kind of disease that exist in those kind of. And we are trying to do more. Just have a conversation with the private sector and ask for their collaboration in this.
Thank you. I hope it answered. And then maybe can I ask Doreen to take two of the questions, the one on the international treaty and the one maybe on the position on the suspension of trade raised by WCS.
I'm actually take 4 questions. So I'll start maybe with Holly from WCS. I just want to point out on those guidelines, there are 6 recommended steps. There's a tendency to pull out one of those steps because the word of temporary bans was used. It is not meant to be one of those 6 recommendations is more important than the others. They are meant to be looked at in concert as is appropriate for the context. Which takes me to my WHO. The member states have asked them to update those guidelines. It is not yet clear if they will be doing that separately or with the tripartite unit is considering how and if we will engage with them. On that, those are also meant to be temporary guidelines, but once they go into ether space and the internet, they seem to be around forever. But they are meant to help countries react appropriately. And that takes me to my second point, which is, I think, more responding to the gentleman from South Africa. You have calls for very strongly an evidence-based approach to policy responses. It is very easy to ignore evidence or manufacture different evidence, and we're really calling for science-based evidence, recognizing that science is uncertain on some of this. Therefore, sometimes we do call for more conservative approaches. But our goal is to avoid unintended consequences. When you focus on these are complex issues, when you focus on one aspect of the issue, you can create problems in other spaces. We certainly saw from the Ebola response in West Africa a few years ago that when we focus too much on aspects of wildlife trade or bans, it created other problems in terms of food security or driving trade underground, which it became even more difficult to regulate. So we have to take these questions on in a systemic, holistic way, and again, avoid other consequences of policies. With regards to the pandemic treaty, so it is currently in a different stage of stakeholder negotiations. I believe 0 draft is coming out. I was told to expect it this week, and then we'll have 1 week to react to it. There are a number of stakeholders. Remember, this is a member state-led process, but they've set up a number of different processes. I've been involved in some of them to get feedback and input from others. Thank you. And so, for example, there was one on the environment dimension, the One Health approach, a 4-hour session I and other colleagues participated in. And those are meant precisely to pull from the knowledge and experience of a wide body, not just UN bodies. Civil society is very much involved, academic research, to make sure the best evidence, the best science, the best experience is being brought to bear on that treaty language. It has a long way to go. Treaties take a long time to negotiate. It's not even clear if this will go toward legally binding, not legally binding, but it is a very active process. So look for 0 draft any second now. And I had one other aspect I want to respond to, which is a comment on surveillance in general, which is, there's a lot of noise going on with preventing pandemics about, first of all, preventing pandemics is not a common definition of prevention. Like that, if we asked everyone, there'd be a slightly different, how long is a piece of string? For me, it's very long. For some, it's actually preparedness and response only. But I do want to point out that there is, the World Bank and WHO initiated a financial intermediary fund, which is being set up right now. In theory, to be capitalized at 1.5 billion is specifically meant to strengthen countries' ability to do all for PPR. I think its first P on prevention is quite weak from my viewpoint. It's really not about upstream investments, but it is much more, from what I can tell, at least so far, about preparedness and response. And a big part of that is surveillance. And so I do think we need to strengthen surveillance. And I think countries know that. It's part of their One Health action plan calls for it. But But again, I'll go back to my word about systems responses in this, where because the better surveillance if you have no capacity to react to that new information, it's not very useful. So I think we have to really think about not only getting better data, better evidence, but then the ability for countries to do something about it. And that's a workforce and a capacity issue, and they have to go hand in hand.
Thank you, Doreen. And the last question that probably remained a little bit unanswered is the issue of how we're using the data that we will collect from the different farms. As we mentioned, the idea is that this data will be first of all brought to the government to decide how to use them to inform new policies, new regulations. I think that we will ask the government whether there is an agreement towards the dissemination of data more broadly, or at least in aggregated form, to give some general idea about the trends that we have seen. But let's say that the first step is actually providing the data to the government in a confidential way, with the view of then disseminating the data later on with government approval once we have aggregated data. And in terms of how we develop the risk assessment framework, I mean, if Ross was here, he would be able to explain much more in detail. But let's say that we started from existing literature and a framework in particular that was roughly developed, and then we worked on that. We established a group of experts, international experts, the Scientific Advisory Committee. Some of them are here in the room today. And then we established different working groups on wildlife crimes, on pathogen transmission, on management of facilities. And for each working group, we try to identify what are the most prominent risks in different areas, in different categories. Based on that, we identify the categories of risk and the indicators. And based on that, we developed around 150 indicators of risks. And that's what we are bringing when we do the interviews in the different facilities, where we go through each indicator and we try to understand whether that facility scores high or low on each indicator. So in short, yes, we developed from almost scratch a new indicator framework that has been developed in cooperation with the partners, UNEP, FAO, and with the Scientific Advisory Committee that includes different sort of experts. Okay, thank you very much. Look, I think that we are 4 minutes away from the end of the workshop, of the side event that has been important. I see the people slowly start to go to their next meeting. So I think that probably it's not necessary to drag this meeting more than necessary. I think it was very useful. I would like to thank the speakers for their role in sharing their information. It's been very informative, and to thank all of you for being here, for participating, listening, and asking your question. So big round of applause to all of you. The last thing that I would ask you to do is, please, if you have time, it takes no more than 2 minutes, fill this evaluation form, and it's important for our reporting system. Thank you very much, and I wish you good continuation of the day.
I just need to say. Oh, yeah, I was okay. It's like that many of them. Yeah, so you know. Yeah. So I will get in touch with you. I think it was really up there.
So we'll
Thank you so much. No, I'm literally all right.
I think the answer. I was suggesting.
I mean, based on last one, I said, the last week, they got the say and make it more public.
Might be nice that you ask if you how to refrain from or abusing.
Thank you. Again, I need the best things. Yes. Usually challenges. There's also it's actually nice discussion.
Now, when be suspicious of anything like this, so they can tell me before you can years.
And so my engagement from
Okay, you can see my exercise. Almost 10 years ago. Yeah.
So you're from the
I'm from the US. Thanks for
You'll have a good understanding.